Flames tore through the barn roof, and Marlowe Whitaker ran straight into the smoke without stopping to think. Beams cracked and gave way above her. Cattle screamed somewhere in the dark, and under the wreckage, her husband lay pinned beneath a fallen support beam, unable to move. The woman his own brother had once called a stranger, an outsider who didn't belong on Callahan land, was the only person on that ranch running toward the fire instead of away from it. Why would a woman despised by her husband's family risk her life for land that wasn't even hers? And what could turn a man against his own brother's wife before he'd ever given her a real chance? A rancher had married a widow, but his brother hated her. Until she saved the ranch. That's exactly where the story's going, so stay with it. Before we get there, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from tonight, and tap that like button if slow burn Western romance with real family stakes is your kind of story. Now let's go back. To the winter this family nearly lost everything. Montana Territory, 1889. The Callahan Ranch was dying and everyone could see it. 1,200 acres of frozen, barren ground. Cattle dropping in the fields. Barns half collapsed under years of neglect. And in town, a bank circling the family like a vulture waiting for the last breath to leave the body. Into that dying place, Wesley Wess Callahan brought home a bride. Her name was Marlowe, a young widow with quiet eyes and a spine of iron, and he'd married her without ceremony, without fanfare, in the dead middle of a season when the ranch could barely feed itself. His older brother, Bo Callahan, was waiting on the porch when they rode in. He didn't smile. He didn't offer his hand. "You brought a stranger into Father's house," Bo said, "while we're trying to save what's left of it." "She's my wife, Bo," Wes said. "She's a woman you've known 5 minutes," Bo shot back. "Married in secret, like you were ashamed of it." Marlowe said nothing. She had learned, in her years of loss, that silence sometimes carried more dignity than an argument ever could. But while the brothers glared at each other over her head, she was watching something else entirely. Cattle in the near pasture, swaying on their feet, weaker than plain starvation should explain. Something was wrong on this ranch, and it wasn't only bad luck. Wes hadn't married Marlowe for land or money. He had precious little of either to offer. He'd met her months after her first husband's death, 2 people who weren't chasing some grand romance, only someone to stand beside them in the wreckage of their own lives. Wes believed marriage might finally give him a partner after years of carrying the ranch alone. Bo saw it differently. He was certain Marlowe had married into the family for what she could take from it. And beneath that suspicion sat something older and rawer. Their father, Augustus Callahan, had left the entire ranch to Wes and nothing to Bo. Years of resentment had been simmering long before Marlowe ever rode onto the property. Bo made his feelings plain the very first week. He mocked Marlowe's knowledge of cattle in front of the hired hands. "A widow telling ranchers how to run cattle," he said, laughing. "That's rich." "I only meant the southern pasture still holds some green," Marlowe said evenly. "It might be worth moving the herd." "It might be worth you staying out of business that isn't yours," Bo snapped. Wes didn't defend her, not right away. And that silence cut deeper into their new marriage than Bo's mockery ever could. That night, alone with her husband, Marlowe didn't raise her voice. "I'm not trying to replace your family," she told him. "I only want to help." "I know," Wes said quietly. "I should have said something today. I'm sorry." She studied him a long moment. "Then answer me this," she said. "Why are your cattle dying when there's still feed in the barn?" It was a question that would unravel everything. Days later, more cattle collapsed in the field, and this time Marlowe examined them herself. Their condition didn't match ordinary starvation. She went to the barn and tore open the feed sacks with her bare hands until she found it. Spoiled grain, deliberately mixed into the good hay. Someone had contaminated it on purpose, and she meant to find out who. When she brought this to Wes, Bo overheard every word, and weeks of buried fury broke loose at once. "You're accusing this family," Bo snapped, "on the word of a woman who's been here 5 minutes?" "I'm telling you what I found," Marlowe said, refusing to back down. "I'm not accusing anyone yet. I'm asking questions." "Convenient, isn't it?" Bo said, "that trouble starts the same month you arrive." "Enough," Wes said, stepping between them. "She's my wife, Bo. If she says something's wrong on this ranch, we listen to her." Bo's face went pale with anger. He turned and stormed out, and Wes followed him into the yard, demanding answers. What came pouring out of Bo was years of buried pain. "You think this has been easy for me?" Bo shouted. "Watching father hand you everything, the land, the house, the name, while I got nothing. And now you're choosing her over your own blood." "She's my wife," Wes said again, quieter this time, but no less firm. Bo's jaw tightened. "When she takes this place from you," he said, swinging up onto his horse, "don't come looking for me." Then he was gone, riding into the frozen dark, and Wes stood alone in the yard, having lost his brother, at the exact moment he needed him most. Marlowe refused to let the matter rest. She spent the following nights combing through Augustus Callahan's old ledgers, searching for anything that might explain the ranch's collapse. What she found nearly stopped her heart. Financial records showed cattle had been sold under the Callahan name for months, and the money had never once appeared in the ranch's accounts. Every transaction carried Bo's signature. She brought the ledger to Wes with trembling hands. He stared at his brother's handwriting page after page, something in him breaking with every line. Without a word, he saddled his horse and rode out to find Bo himself. He found him at an old, abandoned line cabin, miles from the house, and what followed wasn't the confrontation Wes expected. "You've been selling our cattle," Wes said, throwing the ledger down between them, "under our name, and hiding it from me." Bo didn't flinch. "I did," he said, "but I never took $1 for myself." "Then where did it go?" "To father's debts," Bo said, his voice cracking for the first time in years. "Debts he never told either of us about. He borrowed against this land more times than I can count before he died. I found the notes after we buried him. I was trying to pay it down quietly before the bank found out how bad it really was. You could have told me. And watch you look at me the way you're looking at me right now," Bo said, his eyes wet. "I was trying to fix it. I made it worse. I know that better than you do." Wes was silent a long moment, the anger in him draining into something closer to grief. "There's something else," he finally said. "Someone's been poisoning the feed. Was that you too?" Bo's eyes hardened. "No," he said. "That wasn't me. But I've heard a name in town I don't like. Silas Vandenberg." Neither of them had proof yet. Only a name, and a growing dread that the real enemy on this ranch wasn't each other. The banker arrived within days, and the true threat to the Callahan ranch finally showed its face. Silas Vandenberg had been waiting years for this ranch to collapse, quietly buying up every failing property in the valley around it. He gave Wes 30 days to repay the remaining debt in full. 30 days, Wes said. "You know we don't have that kind of money." "That's not my concern," Silas said, smiling thinly. "It's simply business." "Funny kind of business," Marlowe said, stepping forward. "That seems to know exactly when a ranch is weak enough to fall." Silas's smile flickered, just for a moment, before he turned and rode away. But Marlowe had seen enough in that flicker to know his hands weren't as clean as he wanted them to believe. No money, dying cattle, failing land, winter closing in fast. It seemed like there was no possible way through. But Marlowe hadn't given up. She remembered the southern pasture, the patches of stubborn green she'd noticed her very first day on the ranch, even in the worst of the drought. Digging through Augustus's old papers, she found an irrigation map showing a forgotten underground spring beneath that same pasture. If the collapsed channel could be restored, that spring could feed water to the herd and save what remained of the ranch. "We don't have time for this," Wes said, staring at the ruined channel. "Then we stop, wasting what we have," Marlowe said. It was the moment everything shifted. She was no longer the outsider standing at the family's edge. She was the one holding the only plan that might save them. And then Bo came back. He rode in, bracing to be run off the land for good. Instead, Wes looked at his brother and said only, "We need your help." Bo said nothing at first. He simply picked up a shovel and started digging. For the first time since Marlowe had arrived, the three of them worked side by side. Bo and Wes tearing open the old channel with their hands raw and bleeding, Marlowe rationing the last of the feed and steadying the herd through the cold. Slowly, painfully, the rivalry that had poisoned every conversation between them began turning into something else. Cooperation. Maybe even the first threads of trust. But the ranch wasn't finished testing them. A violent late-season storm rolled in without warning, and within hours it tore the newly repaired channel apart. Cattle panicked, stampeding through the dark. Lightning struck near the barn, and fire caught instantly in the dry wood, spreading faster than anyone could stop it. Wes ran straight into the burning structure to free the trapped animals. A support beam gave way overhead and crashed down, pinning him beneath it, smoke pouring into his lungs. That was the moment Marlowe saw him through the flames and ran in after him without a second's hesitation. "Wes!" she screamed, dragging at the beam with everything she had left. "Stay with me. Don't you dare stop fighting." She pulled him free, coughing, half blind from the smoke, refusing to stop until he was clear of the flames. But the cattle were still trapped inside, and she went back a second time. This time she threw open the southern gates and drove the terrified herd toward open land, toward the pasture, toward whatever safety still remained. By morning, the storm had passed and the ranch looked like a battlefield. Scorched wood, flooded fields, exhaustion carved into every face. But the cattle had survived, and the underground spring was flowing at last, water reaching the southern pasture for the first time in a generation. Bo stood at the edge of it, watching the woman he'd once accused of scheming for the ranch standing knee-deep in mud, having risked her life twice in one night for land that legally wasn't even hers. Something in him finally gave way. When Silas Vandenberg returned, expecting to seize the ranch, Wes was waiting for him with a payment in hand. Money earned from selling healthy cattle to neighboring ranchers, all because of the pasture Marlowe had refused to give up on. "This settles the debt in full," Wes said, setting the payment on the desk. "And we know about Jed Barlow." Silas went still. "I don't know what you mean." "The hired hand you paid to spoil our feed," Marlowe said. "You didn't want to wait for winter to finish this ranch off, so you paid a man to speed it along. Jed already told the sheriff everything in exchange for not hanging for it himself." Silas's face drained of color, his composure cracking for the first time since he'd walked through the door. "You have no claim here," Marlowe continued, placing Augustus's original deed on the desk beside the payment. "This clause protects the property for the full length of any disputed family debt. Whatever you were counting on, Mr. Vandenberg, isn't coming." Silas's plan to swallow the whole valley collapsed in front of him, piece by piece, and he left with nothing but his ruined name trailing behind him. The ranch stayed with the Callahans. Later, alone by the fence line, Bo finally approached Marlowe. There was no pride left in his voice, only honesty. "I thought you came here to take my brother away from this family," he admitted. "I didn't take your brother from you," Marlowe told him. "I gave him someone to stand beside him." Bo nodded slowly, something loosening in his chest that had been tight for years. He didn't call her an outsider again after that. He called her family, Months later, the Callahan ranch was unrecognizable from the broken place it had been that first winter. The southern pasture stretched green and full. The herd was healthy. The brothers worked the land together, side by side, the old resentment finally laid to rest. Standing at the fence line as the sun dropped low over the valley, Wes pulled his wife close. "When I married you," he said, "I thought I was just bringing home a wife." He looked out over the land they'd nearly lost. "I didn't know you were bringing this whole family back together." Marlowe smiled and said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. From the house behind them, Beau's voice rang out, calling them in for supper, and for the first time since their father had died, the ranch finally felt like home again. A rancher had married a widow, but his brother hated her, until she saved the ranch and gave this family a reason to stand together again. If this story moved you, don't scroll past without hitting subscribe. There are more Western romances like this one waiting for you. Tell us in the comments which moment hit you hardest. And if you enjoyed the journey, leave this video a like before you go. It helps this channel more than you know.